New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Join our celebration of Black History Month. Only on New Thought Media Network. New videos every day at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, or watch anytime on our YouTube channel. 28 unique Black History moments. Every day in February. Only on New Thought Media Network.
New Thought Media Network proudly presents the 2025 season for Nonviolence Meditation Series, January 31st through April 4th. Embrace nonviolence every day with our 64 unique video meditations. Join us at 6 a.m. Mountain Time or watch anytime on our YouTube channel. Featuring a collection of New Thought voices, the 2025 season for Nonviolence Meditation Series. Only on New Thought Media Network, January 31st through April 4th.
Hey everybody, Tracy Brown here. I'm so glad that you have joined me today for the Inclusive Church, where we come together and explore the idea of what does it take for us to have spiritual communities where oneness does not require sameness. And what does that mean? Like, we know what it means, but then how do we do it? So every week we get together right here in Noon Mountain Time and just explore a concept, a tool, a technique, a tip that allows you to build your toolkit, to build your confidence, and to think about things that you may not have thought about before related to being inclusive in a spiritual community. If this is your first time catching the show or being exposed to me, you can find out more about me, Tracy Brown, at stainedglassspirit.net. Stainedglassspirit.net. I'm the author of the book, Stained Glass Spirit, and do a lot of work with communities all over the U.S. around being inclusive while also focusing on and preparing people to apply spiritual principle in the world. Today we are thinking about and talking about pastoral care. And I don't think I've ever done a show about this specific topic. And as I have been doing occasionally, at least once a month, I am highlighting some key concepts that are in the upcoming book, the soon-to-come book, Inclusive Church. And so there is a section on providing pastoral care, and there are 4 key things that I talk about in this section of the book. Share your definition of pastoral care, respect the family dynamics, learn cultural norms and needs, and partner with community providers. So those are the 4 key points that I'm going to spend a little bit of time on with you today. Now, when I say, how does diversity, how does the multiplicity, how do all the different kinds of people you are serving how are they affected by pastoral care? What I realize is we have to actually start with defining pastoral care. And I I grew up in a church environment where I was exposed to pastoral care as people who were leaders in the church or elders in the church, deacons or deaconesses, going to the hospital to visit people, or if you were on the sick and shut in list, if you were experiencing some medical problems, or if you were disabled and unable to attend church in person, then someone would come out to your home. And there may have been other things that were happening under the banner of pastoral care. I can imagine my sisters watching this and going, "That's all you thought it was? Didn't you know about this and this and this and this?" But literally growing up, that's what I thought pastoral care was. You go visit people when they're sick or in the hospital. You take them communion if they are unable to attend on first Sunday. And, other than that, I just didn't have any concept of pastoral care. Now, since then, in my 20s, I began to visit many churches from many different denominations. I was exposed to many of the Eastern traditions. And I also, in my late 20s and early 30s, got exposed more to Judaism. And so I've seen a lot of approaches to providing care, not just from the pastor, but the care that connects people to the church. So I've seen churches where pastoral care actually includes inviting people who are homeless in to stay in the fellowship hall or the gymnasium, or special quarters designed to accommodate people to sleep when it's cold outside. I've seen pastoral care be expressed as sending birthday cards to every member or everyone who's on the mailing list who provides their birthday. I've seen pastoral care be exhibited or demonstrated by providing food to people, either through a church-run pantry or by providing food once a month to families that have been identified in a variety of ways. So pastoral care is not one of those terms that the definition is universal. So the first thing you really need to remember to do if you are leading in a community that's multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-generational, you really, really need to remember to share your definition of pastoral care, your definition for your community, because there's no one right way and there's no one wrong way. And in a lot of New Thought or metaphysical spiritual communities, it is interesting to me that a lot of pastoral care is not really about one-on-one relationship or one-on-one, touching individual community members, that there are a number of communities that define pastoral care in a way that feels like community outreach, or that looks like community outreach. So the first thing that is really important is to broadly and frequently share your definition of pastoral care. Because if you are serving people from many, many, many different communities in their cultural backgrounds, they are going to show up with their own definition based on what they've experienced in previous religious or spiritual environments, and you will disappoint them, or you could even offend them if you are assuming everybody just defines it the way that you do and expects what you are providing or what you are prepared to give. I know one particular community that comes to mind is a church that was very clear. Pastoral care did not include providing money, like to someone had a financial emergency and they were about to be evicted, or their home was about to be foreclosed on, or even if they weren't that close, but they were just having a rough time and they needed help to pay their utility bills. And this church was very clear, at least the leadership in the church was very clear, that we don't provide money for any expenses. And, and it was clear. But within from what I remember in the conversation, within like a 4-month period, they had at least 10 people who had come to them for financial support and help. And they were saying no a lot. And the way I got involved was they were asking me, is this something they should be doing? And I'm like, well, clearly there is a need and there is an expectation that people who are participating in your church are expecting that. And they're expecting it probably because that's what they have either seen or heard in other environments. And clearly, you get to decide how to define pastoral care in your community, but you haven't been communicating that in a proactive way. So instead, people come forward and you're in the position of saying, no, 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 we don't do that. No, no, and no. The other piece of feedback that I gave that particular community was actually, I'll get to in a minute, it's point number 4, and that is, partnering with community resources so that you do know where to direct people. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So number 1 is share your definition of pastoral care. So in a multi-ethnic, multi-generational community especially, people will come to you with different expectations. And it's up to you to let them know what is the standard or the norm in your community. Number 2, respect the family dynamic. So in talking about this idea of providing pastoral care, all of it has to do with what are people's expectations, what are their cultural backgrounds, what have they been exposed to before, and then what is appropriate or what feels right for your community right now. And so respecting the family dynamics is critical, especially if you have multi-ethnic guests and members. I smile and hesitate when I get ready to say this because I try to be really careful about saying things that could become a stereotype if you only take it or use it on the surface level. So let me remind you that when we are talking about cultural norms become labeled that because 51, like more than 50%, it could be 51%, it could be 95%. But a norm is a pattern of behavior or a standard that is more often true than not. It doesn't mean it's always true. And when we think about people who are in our own ethnic or cultural or racial group, we expect everybody to be a little different. But sometimes we slip into assuming Well, but the group that's different from me, all of them are going to be alike, or 99%. And that's what gets us into trouble. So let me just remind you that when I'm talking about things to watch for with different cultural groups, racial groups, ethnic groups, be aware, be vigilant that you're not turning it into a stereotype and that you are failing to actually get the information you need about a specific family or a specific member. Okay, so having said that, respect the family dynamics. So this is true in all aspects of business and across industries. Um, and so there's no surprise in that. It's also true in our church settings that when we are asking people to sign up for things or to commit to things or to, in the case of pastoral care, to allow us to serve them, to come to their home or to bring food, those kinds of things, we always must be sensitive to. Is it possible that there is a cultural standard that conflicts with this dynamic? One example that comes to mind for me today related to this is a spiritual community that was rethinking how they would both welcome new people and how they would serve people who were just getting out of the hospital or were in at-home rehabilitation. And the group that was reviewing this got really excited about an idea to bring homemade cakes, pies, desserts to new members and to someone who's rehabilitating at home, right? And have members of the community sign up to bake cakes or, bake cookies or pies and to deliver them, or have someone who volunteered to deliver, to pick them up and then deliver them. And and it got really interesting. Partly it got interesting because they were, thinking they needed to determine which flavors, like everybody loves chocolate brownies or everybody loves chocolate chip cookies, or so, we're not going to just leave it up to the person who's baking. We're going to say it needs to be one of these three things so we could have consistency for what we give to our members or the people we are welcoming or providing pastoral care to. So that was pretty funny to me because personally it was funny to me because I grew up allergic to chocolate and I'm no longer allergic to chocolate, but it is not my favorite flavor. So chocolate chip cookies are very low on my list, and chocolate cake, I just have to have a taste for it. And right. So I thought, well, that's individual. That's me. And then I thought about other folks I've talked to over the last few decades. And I remembered a situation where someone said to me, well, I don't eat food that other people cook if I don't know them personally. And it's a cultural thing. And I remember asking them about it. And they said, yes, the way they grew up with their cultural background, they didn't trust that food cooked by people from a specific racial group would be safe or healthy for them. And they also said that even though they didn't personally believe it growing up, they had been wary, another W word, wary of eating food that was prepared by someone of a different racial group because it might be poisoned and then third, they also shared with me that it was a concern because in their culture, they used a certain type of spices and herbs and seasoning, and their experience had been, and they had grown up experiencing that people from different ethnic groups did not season their food the same way. And I found this really fascinating, so I started asking others, how comfortable are you receiving food from other people? And often that response was pretty high, like 70%. And then I would say, well, other people who are from a different racial or ethnic group. And the number went down. The number went down really low, like 30%, 25, 30%. And so I found it really interesting. And over the years, I've checked in with people from different ethnic groups. And, periodically I'll just ask the question and I still get responses that are similar. So I would be careful about that. And the part of that are the family dynamics. Another piece of the family dynamics related to who makes the decisions in a family. And so in many, not all, but in many Asian cultures, there is a tendency that even as an adult, before you make a decision, you engage with or you get input from, if not approval from, the eldest member of the extended family. So sometimes in our spiritual communities, we're putting pressure on people to do certain things, or in providing pastoral care, especially if we're planning to go to someone's home, it may or may not be appropriate if it hasn't been run by and hasn't been previewed by, approved by, or at least reviewed by an older family member. And so, if we think, oh, we're doing a good thing, we're just gonna go over and knock on the door and show up, and yeah. And then we're like, they didn't let us in, or they didn't seem happy that we came by. And it's like, what's wrong with them? No, what's wrong with us that we didn't think to seek whether what was comfortable for us is comfortable for another party or another group. When we say that we value diversity and we seek to be inclusive, part of what must become our natural way of thinking, preparing, and planning is to ask ourselves, does this cross cultural boundaries with the same meaning? Now, before you get the idea that you can't do anything with the family and you can't do anything in someone's home, let me just remind you, I'm not telling you you can't. I'm telling you to be conscious and aware of that, the fact that culture does impact how what you do is received. And impact is way more important than intent. So just because you intended to help someone, support someone, demonstrate you care for someone, doesn't mean your intention is bad. But if it has a negative impact, you are not helping yourself to build a community where there is trust and respect for all. Final comment about respecting the family dynamics is something that really happens frequently, and related to pastoral care, it is the family dynamics related to children and parents, and what you do to support the children, and does it align with what the parents have as cultural norms. I'm not just talking about individual parents and their preferences. I'm talking about cultural norms. Whatever you are providing, whether it's food or money or a card or, a greeting, an email, an article, whether you are showing up in person or sending a video, have you considered how that will play, especially if you are providing support for their children or their teens? So, just one more thing to think about. Let's go to number 3. So, if you just joined us today, we are talking about the things to keep in mind when you are providing pastoral care. And it's really interesting to consider this third element. Now, everything that I already said could fit under this banner alone. And so if I were only going to have one tip, it would be this tip number 3. Regarding pastoral care, learn the cultural norms and needs of different groups in your community. And how do you do that? Obviously, with what I've already shared, you might be asking questions to people one-on-one. But you also, if in your church you have created small groups, if you have created affinity groups, then this is one way to use them. So in my home spiritual community, at different times, we have had a primarily Spanish speaking affinity group or circle. We have had an African American circle. We've had LGBTQ plus circle. We've had a young adult circle. We've had the Sage, the Wise Sages group for people who are seniors. And, so we have a pattern of having different groups at different times. And one of the ways to use those groups is to tap into their expertise from their cultural norms and ask, if we're going to provide pastoral care, and these are the 3 things that are included in pastoral care, then, are there red flags? Are there warning signs? Are there ways that you would particularly like to see this? A very innocent mistake that some communities make. Backing up, let me not call it a mistake, but it is a little insensitive, and it's a tiny detail that can make a big difference. So there's a community that I was supporting for a while, and they were a community that sent birthday cards. And they had a team of people who actually went out and purchased birthday cards, and then they would rotate whose turn it was to each month. Like this month is Tracy's month, and she'll mail the birthday cards, and here's the list, right? And over the course of the year, one of the things that happened was that there were people of color who were receiving birthday cards, and they had images of people who were white. Now, this is not a cardinal sin, and it's not even a big problem, except that when you say to your community every week, we are radically inclusive, or we are designed to be inclusive, or we are committed to being inclusive, and you could send a card with a flower or a puppy dog or a picture of someone who is a person of color, even if you're not matching the actual race of the person you're sending it to. But if all of the cards you send out, it's just like if all of your advertising or all of the images on your website only show people who are white, but then you tell people who are Black and brown, you are welcome here, but they don't see anyone on the site or anyone on your recorded Sunday services who is Black or brown. It's like, okay, they mean well, but I don't think they really know what it means, what the words they're saying mean. So again, I pull back. It's not a mistake, but it's a little insensitive that you have not trained people to be even thinking about that. Okay, so when I'm doing toolkit sessions like today, and I don't have a featured guest, my goal is to always be around 30 to 35 minutes. And when I have a featured guest, I generally will go, 55 minutes, almost a full hour. But today, since I am doing a toolkit, I am aware that I need to be wrapping up in about 5 minutes. So everything does relate to number 3, learning cultural norms and needs. And so I'm going to go to number 5, number 4. There are only 4 tips. Number 4, and that is partner with community providers. So going back to number 1, being clear about what you mean when you say pastoral care for your church means that you probably are going to have a lot of things you don't actually provide. The more diversity that is in your congregation, the more diversity you serve in public programming, the more important it is for you to partner with different agencies or different resources in the community. So when people do have a question or a need, you have a list that you can direct them toward. You can share with them, here are some places you can go for financial assistance in our city or town or state. You can share with them, here are some agencies that actually do provide support, whether it is financial support or domestic violence support or food, need for food. So food, shelter, social services needs. And if you are able to do that, remember that there are different communities that have different needs. So it's one thing to just say generically, go here, but it's better, it's a step up if you've done some additional research to find programs and services that meet specialized needs by age, by disability, by race or ethnicity, by gender, by sexual orientation. If you take the time to create a resource list or a place where your leaders, your staff can go to look up things, then take the time to do that. These are the little things that make you, I'm losing my words, that demonstrate or that support your claim to being inclusive. It's these kinds of things. Is it a little bit extra work? It is a little bit extra work that you might have to do once a year to update, or you probably have a few people in your community who would love to do this research. Or I know in my home spiritual community, we have people who work in different social service agencies, and they can provide a list. So you have people in your community. It doesn't mean you personally have to stop everything you're doing and create a resource list. You don't. But it is important for you to, and for your church to be a resource for the people who come to you for help. So just reviewing the 4 things to keep in mind. Number 1, share your definition of pastoral care. Respect the family dynamics and how they are impacted by race, gender, and other cultural norms. Learn the cultural norms and needs of the people in your community by asking them, by asking them in a proactive way, not waiting until there is a need. And 4, partner with community providers so that you can meet the needs of others. All 4 of these will be in the section on providing pastoral care that's coming up in the Inclusive Churches book in a few months. My name is Tracy Brown, and I hope that this has given you some food for thought and some things for you to keep in mind as you commit to building an inclusive spiritual community. I hope to see you again next week on Tuesday at noon Mountain Time, right here on the New Thought Media Network.
Thanks for watching The Inclusive Church with Tracy Brown. Join us again next week at 12 noon Mountain Time.